going on? What's going on?
Entertain the Geeky.
Doing this with a camera is such a pain in the ass because I'm doing everything in reverse.
Yes.
And I'm just like, what the hell is going on here?
Up, down,
Yeah, so
reverse.
like if I have a generic sense of where Yeah, I was just doing our counting and I'm like, all right. All right. So you've been doing some exploration, you were saying.
I have. I've been one of the things I did this week was I drove around to like 5 different local comic shops to kind of look and talk to the people that were there, take some pictures. Ever since leaving my job, I've been kind of, just curious, right? I've never been to a lot of these places,
Right.
Because I'd always been loyal to where I was. So I went to 5 shops. I went to Comic Relief, the new Comic Relief that just moved. I went to Altered State Comics. Yeah. I went to the Dark Side. I went to Newcastle, and I went to STL Comics.
Okay.
So I'll start with the first place I went to, which was STL Comics. He seems like a very cool guy. He mostly just does back issues.
Okay.
He does older stuff. He doesn't get new stuff, but he's got a lot of toys, and he clearly is like a smaller version of, a V-Stock.
So it's a collectible shop then.
Yeah, where he buys stuff from you. He repackages it himself.
Okay.
If it doesn't have packaging, stuff like that. V-Stock does those kinds of things.
Right.
But they're, it's a
Big
Walmart.
box.
Yeah, it's a Walmart of nerd stores. But no, so it's really cool store. He's got really good displays. The only problem I had going in there is all of his comics are just on tables in boxes with no organization whatsoever.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, everything's just thrown in there.
So there could legit be gold in there.
There could.
And you would have zero idea.
You
would
would unless you've
literally
got
have to
5 hours to kill.
Yeah, and I guess that could make a cool day or whatever if you have the time for it, but fuck.
It definitely was jarring, to say the least. If you were somebody who was, hunting back issues and that was your thing, it would probably be fine. But if you're going into a store looking for something specific, you know what you want, and then you got to spend an hour trying to find even if they have the thing you want, because he doesn't know what's in the boxes either. Most of it is buys. He pulls out the stuff that he's going to sell at a higher price or get graded or whatever it is, and everything else just goes in the box. So he couldn't even tell you, you couldn't even say, hey, do you have Amazing Spider-Man number 27? Maybe. Maybe in the box.
So for a hunter,
yeah,
that's a cool spot.
Oh, it's cool. Yeah, absolutely. If you're the kind of person that likes being on the hunt and just not knowing what you want and going through boxes until you find that you see, you know what you want when you see it kind of guy, then yes, absolutely, that place is for you.
Okay.
And like I said, the dude who runs it seems like a very nice guy. I did ask him about new comics while I was there because I kind of walked around and I was like, am I missing it? Where are your new comics? And he's like, oh, we don't do new comics.
Huh. We
just do older stuff. I mean, we have some newer stuff from buys, but we don't stock newer comics on our shelf.
I mean, and I guess I get it because like if you are a comic book shop, that is like the hardest thing to deal with.
Yeah. Is the weekly warrior.
Weekly issues, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And just dealing with Diamond and DC and everybody who's doing it.
Yeah. I mean, I love it, but I can understand why it can be a frustrating thing.
Sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So yeah, I went there.
And that was STL Comics, right?
That was STL Comics. It's out in St. Charles, right off of 94 and Jungerman, if I remember right.
Okay.
And trust me out there, no one's paying me to say any of this stuff. I just wanted to get a feel for what other comic stores are in the area. So after I went to STL, I went to Newcastle, which is right there by where you used to live, actually.
I'm very familiar with Newcastle.
Yeah, I was going to say, he knew you. He actually, when I said Entertain the Geeky, he was like, oh yeah, Chris. I was just like, you've heard of us? Awesome.
So we actually, years ago, we went in there because we were doing a do's and don'ts of comic buying.
Yeah.
And just like for the uninitiated, like, what should you look for and stuff like that.
Right.
They were nice enough to open up the store a little early so we could go in and do that.
Nice.
The problem is that video never saw the light of day.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah.
Would have been cool.
It would have been cool, but something we can do in the future kind of thing.
Yeah. But it was a cool place. It was your grandpa's comic shop. And I don't mean that in a bad way.
Very much as
far as displays go, he's got old records in there. You know what I mean? Like, it's very much your dad's comic store.
It is exactly what you expect out of a comic store.
Exactly. Yeah. It smells a little musty in there. The shelves are clearly old. The dude who works there actually didn't want anything to do with being on the internet. He told me, I said, can I mention you by name? Because I talked to him for a little while. And he was like, I'd prefer if you didn't. So
I've listened to that show.
We're not going to do that.
Keep my name out of your
Keep my name out your mouth
yeah.
kind of thing. Yes. But he was very nice. He was
Super
right in the middle
guy.
of doing a comic buy. So he was kind of like looking through some stuff. He was pulling out things that he thought were a little more valuable. I actually got to sit there and watch that process a little bit. But he has a lot of stuff.
He is a doll of a human being.
He does. He also does this really interesting thing. Because I was in there on a Tuesday, so it was the day before new comics, where he's got all the new comics on the shelf on the far end of the wall, but he puts like a blanket over it, so you can't see what's in there.
That's kind of cool.
And you can't buy anything that's in there. Yeah, I thought that was really cool.
It's the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, I asked him. I said, "What's up with this?" And he's like, "What was your comics for tomorrow?" I was like, "Oh, you got an unveiling thing." Go, okay, I got you. Cool.
Dude, so honestly, if a store did that and they did their unveiling like as a live video, you know how cool that would be?
That would be cool, yeah.
That would be so freaking sick.
Yep.
And
absolutely.
I'll bet people all over the internet would order comics from them just because of that.
Yes.
Even if they didn't get them for days until oh my God, I love it.
Yeah,
okay,
that's such a cool. But yeah, definitely an older store. He's been there, I think he said 15 years.
That sounds right. Yeah,
give or take.
Yeah, 2008 or 2009. Because I remember right after they opened up, I had gone there and done a couple of F&Ms and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The guy is super nice.
Yeah, he's got a small amount of tables, like 2 or 3, enough to support, 13, 14 people.
Well, that store, he's expanded it since he originally bought it. Did he tell you that?
No.
Yeah, so it started off when you walk in on that left-hand side of the store, the side of the store with all the games, that right-hand side, none of that was there. He didn't own that.
Okay.
So he actually bought that later and expanded the whole store.
Okay.
So it's been really cool to see that one grow. So like even though their game space is small now, it was like microscopic before. Yeah, you were basically sitting on each other's laps there.
But I enjoyed that experience. I stood there and talked to the dude for, a good 20, 30 minutes or so. He definitely is your dad though, right? I mean, he's an older dude. He's clearly been in this a long time. He's a hobbyist. But it was fun, man. He seemed like a really cool guy. And I guess, did you get your comics there when you lived over there?
So I had a couple of times, and I anytime I would go in, I'd make a point to chat with him.
Yeah.
Because he was a nice as can be guy.
Yeah.
And yeah, we were just letting him know that we were here and we wanted to support that shop as much as we could.
Oh yeah.
Because there were a couple of like smaller shops like that we really wanted to put on whatever pedestal that we could with the little platform that we have, and all of our listener base at that point in time was here in St. Louis.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like, hey, if we can, share some love here, we want to.
Absolutely. So then after I left Newcastle, I went to Darkside, which is way out. And Google took me a weird route, so I wasn't even really sure where I was until I came back to the highway.
Yeah.
And I was at Olive, actually. But it's way back, way. I mean, I drove and there was a little traffic at this time of day.
Like City Olive? Like toward the city, or is it more toward Chesterfield?
I think it was more toward Chesterfield. I don't remember. Again, because Google took me a strange way, and I had no idea where I was most of that drive. But I know I was on a road. It wasn't Olive. I was off of Olive, obviously, because when I came back, it took me to Olive to get me to 270.
Right.
Which was weird, right? So then I was like, oh, I know where I am now. Okay. But it's way, way back. Again, I was on a road and there was a little bit of traffic, but I sat on that road for probably a half an hour. just to get back to this place. A small little place in a plaza with a grocery store and some other stuff. Typical, you know.
I've heard the name and I've never fucking been to this place. And
Yeah,
it's literally
yeah.
right down the street.
It's right down the street from you?
Yeah, it's so close.
Where is it at?
So it's considered Chesterfield.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, it's.
That's what I said. I thought more toward Chesterfield.
But I'm always driving up and down Olive because the Walmart and stuff that I go to
sure.
are all the Chesterfield ones.
Yeah.
So yeah, it like makes sense. I should know that that's there, and I'm an asshole and don't.
Right. But little place. It was cool. It was small in there.
Yeah.
And it's very minimalist. From what when I talked to that guy for a little bit too, and from what I understand from what he does is he really only orders comics for pull and holds. If he gets anything for the shelf, it's like 1 or 2 copies.
So cool.
Yeah. He doesn't spend a lot of his budget on new comics. But he still had some cool stuff in there, right? He made a point to pull Lion-O's sword off the wall. What the hell was the sword called? Eye of Thundara.
Oh my god, that's so fucking cool.
Give me sight beyond sight.
Okay.
He pulled it off the wall. He's like, here, hold it. Like, it's a real sword. I was just like, damn, that's really cool, you know? So he made a point to show me some of the cool stuff, but it was a very minimalist store.
Sure.
He clearly buys and sells, right? He had like a big box of magic cards. He only had one table in there, very small area. But he was going through magic cards. He had one other guy that was working with him. I guess he was kind of cleaning up, but he was apparently a guy who's helped him kind of make it look better.
Yeah.
Because that was what I noticed right away. It doesn't feel like you're in a comic store.
Okay.
Immediately upon walking in and looking, it feels just like any other store, like a cell phone store. A lot of the middle area is minimalist.
That's so
1 to 2
interesting.
little displays.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Because that's not the comic shop
No.
thing, you know.
And again, none of these places I went did I have a bad experience at. There were some people that I think did a couple of things better than others, right? I think the Newcastle guy does his trades and the displays for those a little better than any other places I'd been in, with the exception of maybe Comic Relief, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Way different, way different beast.
Yeah. But no, the Dark Side was cool. Like I said, very minimalist. He said in order to keep his costs low, though, he's really not the guy that you can come to release day and say, hey, do you have this new issue of Punisher?
Sure.
He's probably going to say, nah.
I mean, fair
Start
enough.
a pull, and then you won't miss a Punisher, like
ever. Yeah.
I think it's intended to not only keep his costs low, but to help drive his customer base into
the pull and
pull
hold.
box, right? Where they can make sure they're subscribing. And then what he's ordering is what he's ordering for the rest of his customers anyway. So it's nothing to just add whatever you're adding into it.
Definitely.
But it was cool. He was a nice dude. But that was the most minimalist shop I'd been in the whole day.
Okay.
Did less with more, right? He had more space, but he had less stuff in that space.
Sure.
Sometimes you see people that have more space and they have less stuff, or you have less space and you have more stuff, right? Like,
it's just hardwood
it's a
floors
balance.
and white walls. Like
it's a balance. But then right around the corner from there, it was probably about 15, 20-minute drive, was Altered State Comics.
Such a cool store.
And that place is awesome.
Fucking sick, right?
That was, of the little shops I went into,
Incredible.
Which Newcastle is a little bit smaller, Dark Side's a little bit smaller, and Altered State's a little bit smaller. Of the smaller stores, best.
Yeah.
Really, really cool store. The dudes were really nice. They were kind of in there. There was no other customers in there, so they weren't busy. They kind of had a chance to chat with me for a little while, talking about different comics, and they also know who you are.
Well, so I made a point to go in there. Tara was at the DMV there. Yeah. And I had Coraline with me, and I was like, all right, well, I'm going to stop. I've never heard of this spot before, so I'm going to go in here. So I went in, was bullshitting a little bit, and that's actually who we were doing the book club with this first go-around.
Oh, sure.
I felt so bad because we didn't get, like, any steam or do anything with it.
So I need the interest, yeah.
I need to reach out to him because I was also like, hey, I'm just going to come buy a copy of this from you just to support the store.
Right.
And I haven't done that yet, so shame on me. But I'll make a point to go up there. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that store was awesome. I really enjoyed my time in that store. They had a little arcade machine in there.
Yes.
That you can just play.
Yeah.
You don't have to put quarters in it or anything. They just turned off the little money thing. You can just hit continue and just go.
Yep.
And then the one guy said, he was like, I've lost way too many hours of my day playing that damn arcade machine.
Well, so what's really cool about that store is they do a lot as far as open mic nights and stuff like that. They do a bunch of different, like very alternative things to drum up business.
They seemed like hip dudes, man. Way hipper than us.
Very. So the owner's like super punk rock, really cool.
Yeah.
And he's a big Kevin Smith fan. So like we did a bunch of BSing about Kevin Smith and when he brought movies to St. Louis, and he's like, oh, my buddy ran the restaurant that was out of. That's why I have all these cups.
That's cool.
And I was like, this is fucking sick, dude.
Yeah,
like,
that's
how cool is this?
Yeah.
But yeah, such a nice guy, really friendly. Super smart business model, man. Like using your retail space in every way possible to generate revenue.
He really does take advantage of every inch of that store.
Every inch. And it's cool looking in there.
Right.
And he did it all himself.
Yeah.
Did he tell you that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
he's like, dude, I did all of this myself. It was a lot. Very cool.
He also had the largest display of pops I had seen up to that point.
Oh, yeah, it's impressive.
Until I went to Comic Relief. But up to that point, he had the largest collection of pops I had seen. I'm like walking, I'm just like, God, there's pops here I've never even heard of. Where do you just order every pop that comes out?
He does a bunch of the collectors shows and stuff like that. And
that's what he was saying.
Yeah, he such a cool
the toy
dude.
show and some of the other things in the area. Yeah. And that's the thing that I think any shop should get into, right? If you sell this kind
100%.
of stuff, man, go to the Toy Man Toy Show. It happens all the time, right? They do it, like 3-4 times a year?
And it's cheap.
And it's cheap to just get a table and be able to sell stuff there.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of people come through there. And the people that come through there, I think, are the niche, right? If you've got pops and action figures and that kind of stuff, that's where you're going to find the people that are going to buy them. And then you can say, here's my card. We carry this stuff indefinitely, right? We order all of this stuff.
I don't just do it today.
Right.
I do it every day.
Marvel Legends, the DC collectibles, all of those kinds of things. Like that's where you find your audience.
Definitely.
Yeah. If you're going to sell that stuff, that's where you're going to get your engagement from, I think.
All right, so now that we're done blowing the guys at Altered State.
I promise you, no one is paying me to say these things.
No, I bought one of their hats while I was there, and I put it.
Yeah, he gave me like a bumper sticker and a bookmark.
Such a cool dude, such a cool store. Very small, but it would be a great, like, if you're close to Manchester or anything like that.
Yeah,
it'd be a great store to set up a pole because they're just friendly and all that. All these stores are, by the way.
Yeah, everybody. I didn't have a bad experience with anybody. Everybody was very good.
So next was Comic Relief, right?
The last store I went to on my list was Comic Relief. I had other stores on my list that I wanted to go to. I just didn't have enough time in the day. Sure. By the time I got to Comic Relief, it was like close to 7, and most places are closing at 7 now after COVID, and they haven't really changed anything because they've seen, well, I can make just as much money keeping these hours.
There's no point.
I don't have to stay here till 10 o'clock at night.
People need to have lives.
Yeah. But Comic Relief actually moved, right? So where it was in the plaza next to the gas station right there at 5th Street. Is that 5th Street?
Yeah, and then they basically moved around the corner and got that huge
on the
building.
other side of the gas station, and now they have a huge space.
It's massive.
So right away, the first thing that caught my eye when I walked in was in the corner a street light, like a model replica of a street light with Spider-Man sitting on top of it. And I was just like, that was the first thing I took a picture of. I was like, that's amazing.
I actually took pictures while I was there too because the store is beautiful.
Yeah, it really. It's so it doesn't have the kind of charm that I think like your Newcastle or your STL does,
right?
Where it feels like I said, your dad's comic shop. It's very much a department store, comic book store.
It's clean.
Yes.
Sexy.
Everything's organized very nicely. The thing that really got me right away is those little signs they have hanging up from the ceiling that are in the shape of word bubbles that say what this area of the store is, like a department store, right? When you walk into a Target or a Kmart or a Walmart, you don't have to think about where you're going. You can look up and go, apparel, it's over there. Let's go that way.
Well, what they've really done, too, is they've catered that store to the uninitiated. So anybody that's traveling or anything like that, they go into this giant comic book store. Yeah. And it's like, I've never been here before. Oh, okay. I get it.
I know where everything is.
Done.
I need new comics. There they are. Yeah. Let's walk that way.
They did a great job at that.
Yes, it all looks very good. I absolutely love how he displays back issues where he has like the things on top that are slotted that you can kind of flip through, but then the rest is file drawers You pull them out, and there's a couple rows of comics in there. He's got little labels on each of the file drawers because some of them are alphabetical and some of them are just like, this whole drawer is just Spider-Man.
Yep.
Pop it open. Boom, Spider-Man. Yeah, it's all very good because I am the kind of person who thinks alphabetical organization is key. And while he does have alphabetical organization, he also, outside of that, in separate parts of that drawer system, highlights the things people are looking for, like Spider-Man, like X-Men, like Batman.
Right.
Where you can just
your comic book mainstays.
These 3 are the Batman drawers. Let's go through the Batman drawers because I'm looking for Batman. So while I do think it's weird to have those things outside of the alphabet, I understand why. Because they're just such mainstays in the industry, and a lot of people, even if, again, you're going into the store for the first time, you might be going, well, I'm looking for Batman books. Oh, there are 3 whole drawers in a row that are just all Batman books of any kind. Detective Comics, Batman, Adventures, whatever.
Right.
Urban Legends, they're all in there. Just go through there. And everything's very neat, organized, bagged and boarded. I love it. I mean, his store is almost too clean. It's like, it feels like a clean environment.
It's sterile. Yeah, sterile. No, it's very sexy.
I love his bookshelves for trades and how he's integrated glass cases within those displays that are kind of flush with the bookshelf. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's all just very beautiful. I took so many pictures in there. Like, I was just like, this is great.
He did that store like it was artwork, for sure.
And I don't know the guy who I mean, I've met him before, who runs Comic Relief, but he clearly cares a lot about the industry and about this hobby.
Oh, yeah.
Because he tried to make it as
upscale
easy
as
and
possible.
upscale as you can get, right?
For sure.
He really wanted you to have not only an experience of coming in, looking for comics, buying comics, he wanted you to come in and be impressed. And I think he succeeded. I mean, I was impressed immediately. I was just like, oh, wow. Yeah, this is great.
As soon as I walked into that store, well, so you see the old store when you're coming around the corner.
See, I came from the other direction, though, and Google actually took me to the old store. I didn't realize he had moved.
So I saw the old store because the way I was going, that store was
you're
around
coming
the corner
from the other direction.
Yeah, I'm like, huh. And it says, hey, we're moved. And I'm like, oh, okay. It's just right over here. I pull in, and I'm like, holy cow, this is a comic book store?
Right.
This is a goddamn Macy's. So then I walk into the Macy's of comics, and it's not like that. I'm sure they're lovely. I did not talk to anybody while I was there. They were also busy. Yeah. So it was a Tuesday when I went in.
Sure.
So they were doing their thing, and they were like, I think they were like, do you need anything? And I was like, oh, no, I'm cool. I'm just browsing. Like, I didn't want to bother them at all.
Right.
And I was legit just there because I had never been there, and I wanted to check out that space because it looked sick.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to the one guy, but really only to say, hey, I know you're about to close. I do a podcast called Entertain the Geeky, and I would love to talk about local comic shops on at least an episode coming up. Is it cool if I take some pictures in here?
Yeah.
And he was like, sure, man, go for it, right? Because I walked in there like 8 minutes before 7 o'clock.
Oh, wow, okay.
Because I had just made it, and it would have been 12 to 15 minutes, but again, Google took me to the old location.
Yeah.
And I said that to him, and he's like, it's still doing that? I was like, yeah, definitely took me to the one down the plaza down the street. He's like, I'm going to get on that. I'm sorry.
You should call Google.
Yeah.
To kick off this brand new segment that we're going to do called Tales from the Table, I am going to tell you about how Satanic Panic stopped me from playing Dungeons and Dragons for years. Being a kid that grew up in the early to mid 90s, or that was growing up is such a convoluted thing here, because you keep doing it for a long time. Anywho, so being a kid in the 90s, I'm about 6 years old. I'm playing make-believe. I'm a wizard. I'm a knight. I'm all these different things. I'm a soldier, kid stuff. I'm all these things. And I was this all of the time. I would hang out with friends, family, all that, and one of my uncles noticed. He was like, man, you're super into this, you're creative, you're a clever guy. I think, you'll be ready for D&D at some point. And I'm like, D&D? He's like, Dungeons and Dragons, you'll like it. And I'm like, kick ass, man, yeah, let's do that. Cool. That's that. No, it's not. So I'm telling my mom about it, and I'm like, Mom, I'm going to play D&D at some point in time. Uncle Big J said it's cool, and I think it'll be a good thing. And she's like, whoa, what is D&D? And I'm like, Dungeons and Dragons. And she's like, no, you're not playing that. That's for devil worship. And I'm like, it is? And she's like, yeah. It was on the news. A bunch of kids died. They even made a documentary with Tom Hanks. And I'm like, Tom Hanks did a documentary? And she's like, yeah. You're not playing that game because I don't want you to worship the devil. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want to worship the devil. You're right. I'm not playing that game. Fuck that. So I tell my uncle the next time I see him, I'm like, dude, I can't do D&D. And he's like, why? And I'm like, well, I don't want to worship the devil. And he's like, I don't know that this is what you think it is. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure you don't know the hellacious activity you've been engaged in. Let's put a pin in this indefinitely, and I think you should cease any further actions with this D&D. And he's like, right. You don't have to play D&D if you don't want to. Great. I won't. Life goes on. And years go by, and I start playing Magic the Gathering. And when I say start playing that, it's late 90s. A friend of mine's brother played Magic, and he would give my buddy all his crap cards, so we started collecting, and it was, that and Pokemon, because Pokemon were the new hot thing. So we're collecting, we're doing our thing, we're having a good old time with it, and over time, we learned how to play Magic, and I'm like, man, this is badass. And that uncle would be like, oh, you're devil worshiping there, huh? And I'm like, no, man, this is Magic. And he's like, yeah, I know. Life goes on. I keep playing Magic. I'm having a good old time with it. I'm a teenager, and I'm playing more regularly. I start playing, little tournaments, Friday Night Magic, that sort of thing. I get some buddies that I work with when I'm like 19. I get them into it, and they're like, oh yeah, this is badass, man. This is a lot of fun. You should play D&D with us. And I'm like, whoa. I ain't interested in worshiping the devil, boys. And they're like, bro, we go to Bible college. And I'm like, well, clearly Satan has infiltrated that institution, and I'm not willing to be a part of that. And they're like, it's not what you think it is. You like playing Magic, right? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, you think you're a wizard that's making spells happen, right? And I'm like, oh, well, kind of, yeah. And they're like, okay, that's what D&D is. It's just make-believe. And I'm like, are you sure? And they're like, yeah. So I somewhat reluctantly go to play D&D with them. I think it was like a watered-down version of 2nd edition, maybe some homebrew or something like that. It was cool. Had a great time, man. We slayed the dragon, saved the princess, got the gold, the stereotypical, adventure. I told my mom about it the next time I saw her. I'm like, Mom, I did that thing that you didn't want me to do. And she was like, crack? No. And she's like, oh, thank God. I'm like, Dungeons and Dragons. And she's like, no. And I'm like, I did. We didn't even worship the devil. And she's like, are you sure? And I'm like, I think so. And she's like, you need to be careful. And I'm like, I'm trying to be careful. And she's like, all right, well, just, be mindful about what's going on. Don't subject your spirit to anything evil. And I'm like, all right, sure. Time goes on. I don't play for years. Because, again, I'm still kind of iffy on it. And I start playing different board games, and one of the games that I'm playing is Red Dragon Inn, and it's, what happens to adventurers after they finish their campaign. You go to the inn, and you drink, and you gamble, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, this is great. And I start working at a comic shop, and everybody there is playing Pathfinder. D&D 5e had just come out, so everybody's getting into that play system. And I'm watching adventure leagues and stuff as I'm there, and I'm like, oh, holy cow, man, nobody is even close to summoning the devil based off of the limited information available to me being on the outside looking in. Neat. I think I would like to do this. So I'm talking to one of my buddies that works there, and I'm like, man, I want to do some 5e. And he's like, fuck yeah, man, let's do it. And he's like, you can't really do an adventure league because we're working. What if we ran something here for the shop clerks and a few regulars? I'm like, that'd be awesome. He's like, yeah, we'll do it these nights when the store's closed. It'll be a lot of fun. Kick ass, man. So we do. And I tell my mom about it, and I'm like, Mom, D&D is surely not summoning the devil. And she's like, whoo, how can you be sure? And I'm like, well, it's just make-believe. And she's like, I don't know if you know what you're doing. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure I've got a good handle on this. I want to show you something. So I get a copy of Super Munchkin, and I play that with her. And that was like the most watered down and Bible thumper friendly way that I could broach the subject of D&D with her and adventuring without completely sending her over the edge by trying to open a book that I could be reading evil religious text from and saying it in her home. So we play it, and she's like, oh, this is, if you like doing this, cool. I don't get it, but more power to you. And I'm like, okay, cool. My mom gets this now. We start entertaining the Geeky. Merle's Truck Stop in Maine comes out. We start planning a D&D show to do on the ETG network called Dungeons and Dumbasses. I'm fully immersed in it at this point. Years have gone by. And my mom sees all this stuff happen, and she's like, oh, okay. He's not managed to summon the devil yet, so I think he's probably close to out of the weeds. And then we do the dungeon crawl for the Cure a few years later, and we work with Sean White and his charity and have a blast doing that. And my kids got to play D&D for the first time there. And my mom sees this and hears about the cool things that the D&D community is doing for Cancer Foundation at that point in time. She's like, okay, this doesn't seem so bad. Maybe this isn't evil after all. And a few years go by, and I'm like, hey, the kids are ready to get into a campaign, and I'm gonna get my brothers in on one too. And this is where I knew she was sold. No, this is where I knew she was cool, and the satanic panic for her had ended. She was like, that sounds amazing. I hope you guys have fun getting together. It's wild, though, because for years, because of some silly misunderstanding and some goofy news and bad propaganda that was put out there, I avoided D&D, and I didn't even see any of that shit. It's wild. So I hope you enjoyed this little story about why I avoided D&D for a long time, and I hope you enjoy this new segment called Tales from the Table, brought to you on the Entertain the Geeky podcast here. Thanks for hanging out. As always, stay geeky.
But that was my trek through local comic shops. And when I say I barely scratched the surface, there is a glut, absolute glut of comic book shops in the greater St. Louis and Illinois area.
Oh, yeah.
My journey would have eventually taken me across the river into Illinois because there are a few shops over there that I wanted to go to. Fantasy Books is over there in Collinsville or Edwardsville, whatever, somewhere over there.
Do you think there was a knock at the fantasy shop when they made that, Fantasy Books?
No, I think Fantasy Books has been around just as long.
Okay.
I mean, maybe not just as long, but it's been around.
Okay.
And I mean, it might be. Dave Wallace had stores in Illinois at one point, or at least had a store in Illinois at one point.
So maybe that guy bought it from him.
Maybe. And it was just easier to keep the logo and just cut off the end and add his own. Fantasy Books. Nice. Yeah. But so again, I barely scratched the surface. There was a couple places that I really still intend to go to, and we'll talk about them in a future episode. Apothecary is down in South City, I think. That's one I would like. We should go visit them together someday.
I would take actually, a day. I would like to do that because there's a few of them. So everything that you'd mentioned, with the exception of Dark Side, I had been to, and I like all of them for different reasons.
Right.
I should stop being a whore and I should pick one.
I don't think you have to pick one. Again, we have a glut of shops. You have plenty of options. No matter where you are in the greater St. Louis area, there's a comic shop near you.
Oh, 100%.
And that's great. I love that.
It's cool.
And I think, when I walk in and when I talk to these guys, they're clearly doing okay. So the fact that we have a glut is not hurting any one of them individually.
No.
Right?
No,
none of them seemed like they were on the verge of bankruptcy. You know what I mean? They all felt like I felt like they were all doing pretty well. At least because it's never going to be a profitable industry. The margins are just too thin on comics, right? So you're never going to be a billionaire selling comic books, but you can live comfortably.
Yeah, it's all about with comics, it's about how creative you can get on making money. Yeah. Is really what I think that is. And like a lot of these guys, they're doing a good job. I think Comic Relief has a big online presence.
Well, and that's something you have to balance too, right? Is you want your local community,
of course,
but you also have to reach beyond that community, especially if you're talking about niche things.
And to keep the lights on, man.
Yeah.
Because again, while there are people who are diehards at their comic shops, there's also folks that aren't and stuff like that, and you might not be able to keep the lights on with just pulling holds alone.
Right.
So that's cool. Okay, what do I do now? I sell pop figs online.
Yeah.
I sell my comics online. I do trade shows, whatever, and it's all good. Like it's good for the hobby in general.
Yeah, it wasn't until the next day, but I actually got to go to Endless here in Florissant as well. I don't know if you've been up there yet.
I've not been to Endless yet. Yeah.
It's small, but it's nice.
Is it a nice store? He's got
it organized. Everything's very easy to shop. He's got new comics. He's at this point still has older issues on the shelf behind their respective newer issues. Mm-hmm. So if you see number 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 might be sitting right behind it.
Nice.
So take a look. You know what I mean?
That's cool.
You see number 26, number 25, 24, and 23 might be sitting right behind it. Take a look. But he's not ordering much yet. He's still expanding. He's still growing. But no, it's great, man. He's got comics. He's got a small selection of games, mostly just what I saw was mostly like big seller type games.
Sure, the mainstay board games
people are looking for, your Settlers of Catan, your Descent, those kinds of things. But he's also got cards. Look, if you want Pokemon, Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, if you want baseball cards, he's got that shit.
Nice.
I mean, just across the board, that shelf behind the counter, any card you could think of, any card game you could think of, he's got it. They got cards, man.
Cards for days.
Yeah. And he did Free Comic Book Day. I didn't get to go that day.
I saw pictures of it, man.
Yeah, he did do a Free Comic Book Day. He had a good turnout, and he still had a few things left. And so I said to him, oh, dude, did you get that prelude to the Spider-Man 2 video game that the Gamerverse did? And he was like, yeah. He handed me. I was like, oh, because no shop in the area got those.
Oh,
they were not added to FOC until weeks leading up to Free Comic Book Day.
I need to go try to score one of those.
And it wasn't clear that they were free.
Yeah.
Right? So a lot of comic shops didn't order them. So when people came in on Free Comic Book Day, like where I was, they're like, oh, did you get that Spider-Man? I was like, what? There was a Spider-Man 2 video game? What are you talking about? I want that. Right? Like, what? We didn't get that.
No.
And it technically was not a Free Comic Book Day offering, right? It didn't have any of the logoing stuff on it, but it was MSRP'd at $0. It was a comic that you ordered and then gave away for free.
So promo comic, yeah.
Yeah, it was cool, man. And so he's still got a few things left. If you were in your local comic shop and they didn't get it, as most did not get it, you might be able to score one at Endless. So go in and say hi to Scott. Tell him we said hey.
Yeah, I think it would be cool. Actually, I've talked to the Altered State guy at very minimum about doing a podcast episode with us.
Sure.
And he said he'd be down to do that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we should get those guys over here. Those guys are cool.
We might even do it in their shop.
Oh, hell yeah.
That'd be cool because they've got a beautiful spot. We could totally film it there and everything.
Backdrop would look awesome, man.
It would. They've got
with their cool wall and their
fucking
arcade
brick and
machine.
everything. Yeah. It's a sick place.
Not that our backdrop's not great. It's great, right? It's great.
Validate my
I'm in the way
choices.
of the Batman mask. We should move that over.
I need to put him in the middle. Probably.
Yeah, so people can see it. I'm in the way.
I'm gonna change the head because it's the way the cowl sits on that. It's a foam head that's just totally flat, and you can see that the cowl's shaped like this, so it just doesn't work right. So I had to stick it on top of that gumball machine.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. We'll fix it. We'll fix it for you.
For you, our loyal viewers.
Bill, Ted, and Sam, thank you. All three of you.
Right, we got small enough viewers we can name them out by name.
You didn't know the analytics told me that, did you?
Oh, we got your IP addresses and everything.
Yeah. I actually know your physical address. I was going to send you some mail this week.
But yeah, so that was my trek through
your adventure.
The comic shops of Greater St. Louis.
I love it.
Yeah, it was fun.
So we want to encourage you guys to visit your local comic shop. If you were here in St. Louis, go to some of the ones that Jason named here. They're
all great for different reasons.
All awesome stores, and you'll find the one that's the right fit for you. And maybe multiples are the right fit for you. You're going to do some polyamory in the comic place. So, yeah, enjoy that. You can go to entertainthegeeky.com to follow us on all of our social medias and whatnot. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. Hang out with us every week. Subscribe to the podcast. We love doing this.
Leave us a like. Leave us a comment. We want to hear from you.